So Daniela Torres is an environment and climate change professional with more than 15 years of experience in the ICT and energy sectors of Europe and Latin America. And Daniela works as an officer in the Sustainable Resources, Climate and Resiliency team of ICLEI. That's ICLEI. She supports the development of smart cities and urban infrastructure projects in cities undergoing digital and sustainability transformation processes. So there's a lot of stuff in here, and I'm really excited. So welcome, Daniela. I'm really glad you're joining us.
Hi, Dean. Hello, everybody.
Wonderful. And you're based in Germany, correct?
Yes, in Freiburg, in the south of Germany.
Beautiful, beautiful place. And that hasn't been a particular hotspot for COVID, right? But you've been locked down for a few months along with everybody else. How has that been experience-wise for you?
Well, then, yes, we've been in lockdown since early March, not especially because here in Freiburg we have a particular pole of infection, but we are in the border with Switzerland and France, and especially in France, in the Alsace region that is very close in the border. It was a hot spot in France, so that made our city also to take measures to be under lockdown and be very careful, and also the borders were closed, so we really had to go under a lockdown. The measures here in Germany were always a little flexible. We would be able to go and walk, make sports, of course, go to stores and everything, so it has been okay, and now we are going back to the new normality.
Mm-hmm. And so your work at ICLEI, how has the lockdown impacted that? Has it changed?
Well, yes, ICLEI is a small organization. We are around 100 people here in Freiburg. It has impacted because we could not go to the office. So we really had to start working from home, and we were not used to that, believe it or not. So we had to go back to this issue of working from home. Of course, we also, as we work with different European organizations, we had to travel a lot, and that was totally banned. But we learned to work, and I think that's a learning process that we acquired because we used to have a lot of meetings and travel, and now we know that we don't need that anymore. We are more familiar with the ICT tools, WebEx, all the different tools for meeting online, and then also the travels were restricted, so we have learned to work different now.
Yeah, and you're focusing on smart cities, and there's an interesting tie here, right? As far as what the investment, what you're doing there in smart technology. Is that the criticality of that? Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah, you know that in fact part of the work we do. Yes, I particularly work on a smart city development project in the organization, and in fact we have perceived and we have felt in our projects that this issue is taking more relevance more than ever. The impact of ICT on COVID, the positive impact that ICT is bringing in order to reduce travel, to allow better connectivity, and also to accelerate the efficiency of the services that have to be delivered. We have seen an increase, and I think that now we say ourselves that it really makes sense to continue working on smart city projects.
Yeah. And I mean, when people are dying and businesses are stressed like this, smart cities make more sense than ever. And I couldn't agree more with that. And speaking of that, do you think that things are going to return to normal in this one, or will there be a drastic change as things start to open back up?
Yeah, I think that of course it is going to be a change, but for nature I am optimistic, so I always see that the good things of everything that happens, and I think that for COVID, yes, it is going to be a change, but it's going to be a change, but of course everybody will be more conscious on the relationship with other people, in the relationships with the different social interactions, even in work, but outside of work also. And I think that we have to be aware that the economy has to move again. We have to recover the economy. We have to bring business again forward. And of course, we all have to take precautions, and of course, guaranteeing that the health of everybody is preserved, no?
Yeah, for sure. And with that one, I want to double click into more about you, because I want them to learn more, because you studied environmental engineering in college, right? So can you tell us a little bit more why you chose that degree?
Well, just to tell a little of where I come from. I come from Ecuador in Latin America. Now I live in Europe for more than 15 years. But Ecuador is a country with a lot of natural resources. It's a very green country. We have the rainforest, the highlands, where I come from Quito, the capital city. We have the Galapagos Island. That is how can I say, an inspiring location since Beautiful. We are kids. So I really was appreciating that. Of course, Ecuador has been a country of coming from the oil sector, so pollution has always been there. So I've always was interested in that, and also from a family perspective, my father was working in that time in the Ministry of Environment, and he told me that it would be the profession of the future, that probably I should took on that, and I did. I like a lot science, math, physics, so I was very happy to follow environmental engineering.
And so, and your dad was a scientist and an economist, correct?
Yes, that's right.
Wow, and
so
I
that
love
inspired me a lot.
Yeah, totally. And this is so cool, because you talked about STEM, right? And what I love here is that, you know, we have a diversity problem within our industry, you know, not just gender, but all underrepresented groups across the sector. And what I love here is that your father has basically inspired, right? He's from a young age. You've created kind of a purpose-driven career. You've made specific choices, right? And it's not just about environmental, it's also the science behind it. It's the engineering, it's the math, and those things that really add to it. So can you share a little bit more about that journey itself?
Yeah, well, as I told you, since I was in high school, this is an early stage, I always liked science. Yeah. So when I decided to go on environmental engineering, I found that the content of the career was wonderful, because we were talking about chemistry, physics, biology, natural resource management in one single career. It was a new career, so there were very few universities having the degree, especially in Ecuador. It was an influence from one Spanish university that came to Ecuador to set one of their headquarters there. So it was a very new career. So for me, it was very motivating to go on the science and start my journey several years ago.
That's great. And you got the best of all worlds. You got to do physics.
Yes.
That's pretty neat.
Yes. Yes, that's right.
Great.
Yeah.
And you've had a number of jobs throughout your career. And, you know, ICLEI is where you're at now, but it's been a culmination of all the experience, right? So where did you start? What was the first job that you had?
Well, the first job where I started to work in the Latin American Energy Organization, because in the last year of my career of environmental engineering, I decided to focus on energy and renewable energy aspects of environmental management processes. And then I started as an intern, and then I had a permanent position in the Latin American Energy Organization, which is the organization that leads the energy policy developments for Latin American and Caribbean countries. So for me, I was very lucky because the headquarters of this organization was in Quito, Ecuador, in my hometown.
Nice.
So for me, it was very easy to go there. And then, of course, I had the opportunity because of a program of the Latin American Energy Organization with the University of Calgary in Canada. I won a scholarship to study a master on sustainable energy development. That was also a wonderful opportunity for me. And then I decided to focus on the development of sustainable energy. So all the types of energy, but focusing on sustainability aspects. So energy, environmental management for all types of energies, going from, of course, the renewables, but also the non-renewable sources of energy that sometimes are seen as terrible, but we also have to acknowledge that fossil fuels have moved the economy for years. So, and there is also a lot of environmental technologies that support that development. So I managed to understand the whole value chain of the energy sector, of course, focusing always on sustainability.
Nice. And you went in the telecom industry. What I love here is you started as an intern and now you're leading in ICLEI, right? It's just, I love the story. I hope that other folks can see this and be inspired by the journey that you've taken just over the last, 15 years. It's pretty amazing.
Yeah.
So at iMasons, we're working on a sustainability strategy for the digital infrastructure. And we're going to talk more about that later. But one of the initiatives we're focusing on is called Sustainable Data Center Framework. And do you have any advice on that? Because I know you've done a lot of this standards type work.
Yeah, well, just to complement a little of my background, because going on deep to this issue of data center is that I also work a lot in the telecom sector. I work for a big telecom operator in Europe. First, I work in Ecuador, and then I moved to work in Spain. That's why I am here in Germany now. And I started the whole environmental department and climate change department from this telecom operator Telefónica in Spain. And a part of our work was to understand how the digital infrastructure, telecom networks and data centers were contributing to the impact of the sustainability impact of the company and how to manage that properly. In that process, I understood a lot the importance of managing correctly and understanding very well how digital infrastructure operates in order to account effectively the impacts, the energy impacts, the greenhouse gas emissions impact. So I work a lot on that, and then I understand how data centers operate and as part of the infrastructure from telecom operators. And part of our work was also to participate in standardization processes on an European level and a global level in order to develop standards that could be shared by the whole industry. And data centers was part of the work I used to do. And one thing that is very important to know is that we started this process of developing standards and the industry organizations across Europe and also outside Europe. The ICT sector was starting to assess the impacts of the ICT technology. So we had this the Smart 2020 report. There was the flagship report like more than 10 years ago, acknowledging the benefits of the ICT sector to reduce carbon emissions. So it was a very interesting, how can I say, experience. And when we talk about data centers, I think that now that digital infrastructure is coming to this moment where most of the services that occur are based on technologies, well, we have to acknowledge also that data centers are a high consuming of energy and resources infrastructure, no?
Yeah, and you talked about standards and the work that's been done, and I remember in our conversations you were saying about considering the full life cycle. It's not just about carbon. When I was talking to John Tassilo before, it's we used to say this is going to be every click is carbon negative, but there's so much more than that, right?
Exactly. And when you see it from a methodological perspective and with a science base, when you analyze the infrastructure itself, you have to do all the high life cycle assessment of the different infrastructures. Mm-hmm. And of course, any activity in the world has positive and negative impacts, and we have to be aware of that. But the important thing is to account it properly in order to demonstrate the benefits and also to manage the possible impacts that could happen. So when we talk about data centers, we have to, of course, do a whole life cycle assessment of data centers. As I said before, not only for energy, also we can assess the water impact of data centers, the land use impact of data centers. So we have to do a whole complete assessment, and of course, seeing from a perspective of analyzing the data centers as part of a energy system or a city system, a broader perspective of what a data center is.
Yeah, that ecosystem I think is important. And I think if there's one takeaway from this as well, it's that there are standards that exist. This is not about reinventing the wheel, correct?
Yes, that's right. And I think that we are very lucky that our industry is a very knowledgeable industry. Mm-hmm. And I think that we have lots of experts developing standards already for years. We have several organizations, standardization organizations, that have best of class standards. And I think that we have to take that into value, mm-hmm. and of course, manage the expectations, no? Because we have standards from the US, from Europe. So it's very important to have this collaborative approach in order to test the standards, to drive the industry into testing the standards, and of course, learning from each other, no?
And is there a correlation here between data centers and cities, like the smart city work that you're doing? Anything that we should consider?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, it's not something that is very well developed. This issue of smart cities and the link between data centers is been explored just a couple of years ago. This is not something that is on a deep dive in the last years. But from the experience that I have in some of the projects that I have worked here in Europe, we have some examples of cities that are conceiving data centers as potential sources of energy. Mm-hmm. For district energy or for renewable energy systems on a city level. So there is one case, for example, in the city of Stockholm, that one of the data centers or a couple of data centers of operating part of the network of the city, the telecom network of the city, they mm-hmm. are selling excess heat from the data centers to the district energy grid of the city. Okay, so of course, Stockholm has a very, mature system, a district heating system, which is very decentralized, and everybody is able to connect. But in the past, the cities were thinking also only to centralize sources of energy for the district heating, for example. But now with data centers or, for example, waste management plants, there can be some excess heat or excess energy that can be introduced in the city system too.
Yeah, and I remember when you and I were talking before, you made a statement that really resonated with me. The network is the city, and the city is the network.
Yes.
This is about an ecosystem, and what you just explained is, data centers aren't separate. They're actually a part of the system, the ecosystem itself. And so, being able to contribute for waste heat, for example, in Stockholm, or other aspects of how to support the city, that is going to be interesting as it develops. So really, your advice here is about the digital infrastructure needs to be part of that city ecosystem, not a bubble in and of itself.
Yeah, and also, of course, I am not an expert in data centers. Of course, I'm talking about the perspective from the city center. So if we see it, data center, it could be a high consuming energy infrastructure of the city, but also it can be a source of energy for the city. So if data centers, I've heard of different technologies from data center companies that they are exploring also the integration of renewables into their frameworks, fuel cells, other types of renewables. So why don't taking advantage of this energy that can be generated or released from data centers as part to the energy system, no?
Yeah, and if you look at the way smart cities are coming together and edge, everything is distributing. And so, there's demand response and just workload up. There's just so many things in the smart city that are going to be developed over the next, 5 to 10 years that are going to truly make it an ecosystem. So let's talk about ICLEI and sustainability a little bit more. Tell me more about what you do at ICLEI.
Okay, well, I am part of the Sustainable Resources, Climate and Resilience team. We are the technical branch of ICLEI. So for the ones that are not familiar with the organization, ICLEI is a non-profit organization. It's a city network. Our members are the cities, not as the industry networks, that the members are the companies. Here we are talking about that the members are the cities, the local governments. ICLEI was formed in 1992, several years ago, in the Rio Summit. And ICLEI had a mandate which was to implement the Agenda 21 for sustainability in cities. So it was an organization that was given the mandate to help local governments to implement sustainability aspects in whole value chain: waste, energy, water, lots of issues of sustainability on a city level. So ICLEI is a organization that is a world organization. I work in the European Secretariat, which is the biggest office of ICLEI worldwide, and I am part of the technical team, and I mainly contribute on smart city project development and urban infrastructure development projects.
Got it. And so you're working with the European Commission, and also Google and ICLEI have an action fund. Is that correct?
Yeah, that is a very new project, and that is one of my favorites now. Well, ICLEI teamed Google.org, the philanthropic branch of ICLEI, of Google, in order to identify and develop projects that promote environmental and climate action in cities based on the use of different data sources, okay? And one of the data sources that is available for cities to innovate and projects to develop is the Google Environmental Insights Explorer tool, which is a wonderful tool that Google has. I'm not making any promotion here. From a technical perspective,
it's a great resource.
It's a very great resource that when you go on it, you can see that Google is able to quantify, based on the data they have, the emissions from the city, emissions from transport, emissions from buildings, and also they are able to assess the solar roof potential from cities. So they give referential values, so cities can see, and also external organizations can also use that data in the future. So we are working with them in order to foster the development of projects in 12 cities of Europe so far.
That's awesome. Yeah, there's just so much goodness in there, and IT for good or tech for good. The cities are going to transform, and that goes into another topic, because there's a key portion of this that's called 5G, right? You worked at Telefonica during the transition from 3G to 4G, correct?
Yes, that's right.
So I'm interested in your thoughts on the impact of 5G. But before we do that, for the broader audience, anyone listening to this, 5G does not cause coronavirus, okay? Regardless of what you see on the internet. So please stop burning down cell towers. I don't understand. Anyways, give us your thoughts on the impact of 5G in smart cities.
Well, I think that this is now my personal opinion based on my experience working on the telecom sector. Well, I think that 5G is here to stay, and that is something that everybody has to acknowledge that, and cities also have to acknowledge that. And of course, we have to think that 5G will also have to be part of the urban infrastructure. Okay, so I think that from difference from 3G and 4G, where the how can I say, the technology or the infrastructure was very dispersed. Okay,
right.
There were
fewer towers,
in the
right?
city. There were fewer towers, but now we know that it's coming more. Okay, so if they're coming more, it has to be physically set somewhere. So it has to be in the city. So I think that, of course, where all the infrastructure is going to be set, it really has to be planned and designed considering the urban environment. No, I think that is something that is important. I also think that 5G will bring a lot of benefits for city services, not only for citizens or industry, but also for city services itself. So totally. I think that that it has to be how can I say, acknowledged that this infrastructure is common and it has to be part of the city. Also, as part of my experience in the different smart city projects, there's one project in several cities of Europe, and specifically in Barcelona, that they are trying to test, to pilot a 5G infrastructure, to test how would be the architecture of the infrastructure as part of the city infrastructure. Okay, yeah. So there are several pilots trying to put the 5G technology, for example, in pole lights of the city.
Yep.
That this also happened also in 4G technologies, but now it will be more. Yeah. And I think that that is something that has to be a continued war between the city and the industry.
Totally agree. And what you just explained, like the integration of this technology into the urban environment, I think is really important. So architects and engineers need to figure out, how do you make something be there, but you don't even know it's there. And 5G is going to need 10 times the amount of actual towers. So femtocells, picocells, there's just a lot of them besides the large cell towers that were there before. And then the amount of data that's going to be generated, but the result of that, like you said, city services. Can you imagine if you can orchestrate traffic to ensure that critical life-saving people can get through traffic jams and route? That's going to be orchestration across an entire city. 5G is going to accelerate that from a latency standpoint. So all of these things are going to be thousands of benefits, right, that come across. But that, you're right, it's coming in waves here in a big way.
Yeah.
So
and one thing that Dean, if you allow me to mention, this touch, you said that please be aware that 5G does not cause coronavirus or something like that. We really have to think that there is people that might have doubts about this infrastructure. So I think it's the role of the industry and role of the local governments also to inform properly. Because if the technology is not known, people will have doubts, and that is a normal thing to have. And due to the experience on smart city projects, we know that when you inform people before, the resistance is less, and it's all okay. So I really encourage, and as I said before, as a personal opinion, I think that we really have to work as professionals from the industry and also from the city to inform and give all the information to citizens. No?
Yeah, no, and that's such an important point you just made there. In educating the citizens as far as what is all the stuff going up. First off, is it safe for me? And secondly, is what's it going to give? Like, why is this happening? Because I think that a lot of this stuff that comes up with these conspiracy theories is somebody makes a statement on the internet and it just gets propagated. It's so fast.
Exactly.
But it's not based in fact, right? It's not based in those. So I agree. We can help in that education to really make people understand why digital infrastructure is helping the economy, it's helping the environment, it's helping people, right? It's that ecosystem. That's right. So
yeah.
Great. And so I'm going to shift into our last segment here. And last month in the Americas Summit, we unveiled the iMason's sustainability vision. Every click improves the future. Just to remind everybody, what we're saying there is that digital infrastructure contributes to the global economy and society without harming the planet. That ties right into what we just said. So can you tell me what this vision means to you, Daniela?
Yeah, well, when I saw the link, because I think that's the first thing I saw when I start looking information from Mason's infrastructure, when I was approached in order to see if I can participate in the summit, and I saw it and I said, oh, this is so nice, and just because two things. I think that it has a component that I like, which is that when you say about every click improves the future, you're involving the user somehow in that click, because the click will not come alone. it will be someone doing the click. So I think that that makes this link of the importance of understanding that every impact or everything that you do, even if it's one click, it's going to have an impact. And the second thing that I like from your lemma is the future vision. No, you say improves the future. So in these moments that we are all with this uncertainty feeling because of COVID, we can see also to the future. No, and if every click improves the future, so it's, for me, it's motivating. I like it. I like it a lot.
It's not going to be easy, and that's the best part of the vision. It's aspirational and almost unattainable. But, you know, we also said that we couldn't do a lot of these things before, and nothing, you know, never waste a crisis.
Yes, it's true. And also it takes a responsibility from the user, and that is something that is needed, because we can have technology, but if the user doesn't use the technology properly and consumes a lot of energy, and it's how can I say, does not recycle effectively the equipment at the end of life, that will really have the impact that we don't want. So I think that involving the user is critical.
Excellent. Circular economy. The UN Sustainability Development Goals, like there's 9 of them that already align to this. So it's great. Well, last question for you. Given your experience with smart cities and infrastructure, you know, what are the biggest opportunities for our community, right, for infrastructure masons to contribute?
I was thinking about, as I said before, in my experience on the smart city project, and coming from the ICT industry and now being a little outside of the industry, that I think that it's very important that you could probably provide the members on information, up-to-date information and state-of-art information about the sustainability trends, but not only of the ICT sector itself, but in general, okay, what's going on with the Sustainable Development Goals. If you're working in the smart city arena, probably talking about what is going on in the urban sustainability agenda. So the industry is also familiar with this, what's going on with the international negotiations of climate change. So the industry can be prepared to address that. If the industry managed to understand correctly the global sustainability agenda or the regional agenda, depending on where they are, I think it will allow them to be more prepared for the future. Another thing that I think is important also is to sharing the information about the standards. I am sure that lots of your members are part of the different standardization bodies, and there's a lot of work happening there that could be shared. That could be knowledge platforms to share this could be another issue, and of course find a space to develop new innovation ecosystems, new innovation opportunities, not only for the big players in the industry, but also for the startups, for the new players that want to develop new technologies in order to develop innovative things on the field of sustainability. Also inviting non-ICT sectors, the non-ICT environmental sector that is there, that probably could bring some ideas to the ecosystem. And another thing that also is important, just to finalize, is that probably sharing information about funding opportunities, not for sustainability projects, because sometimes there is a lot of funding from the environmental and energy arena that sometimes is not captured by the ICT industry. Okay, so probably that could be another alternative.
Yeah. There's money out there. So this is what I'm hearing too. So
yes, but it has to be very good projects to get that money, and also to bring private investors forward.
Yes. And there's definitely a lot of those. So, well, thank you, Daniela. I really appreciate you taking the time here. I am going to open it up just for a few questions very quickly. Okay. We're running short on time as usual. These conversations are always engaging. So we've got a significant amount of stuff popping in here, but if you've got questions, feel free to shoot them in. But let me jump into one of these. So John Tasillo actually asked you a question. So he absolutely agree with your network perspective. It's an area that requires more quantification given the energy at multiple nodes required for 5G at an aggregate level. And 5G offers a tremendous amount of societal and economic value, but we need to educate. And so do you have ideas on how that education for policymakers could happen?
Yeah, I think that that there is a gap, of the industry thinking that they know everything about sustainability of the industry, and then the city or the regional government or the national government that they think that they have the only knowledge about the environmental and sustainability issues. So in order to bridge this gap, I think we have to find the right forums. Of course, as I said before, the industry has to be part of the different policy developments in their scope of action. And also, as I said before, standards could be an important way of how to reduce this gap. Okay, this gap between municipalities or local governments or national governments and the industry.
Got it. So this is another ecosystem. So the government, the public and the private sectors have to work together on how this is going to work in those cities.
Yes. Yeah. And sometimes this gap can be bridged with the help of the industry associations. There are several industry associations of the ICT sector for the telecoms, for the data centers. There are communities, so those could be the voice of the industry with the government, and also the government has to have access to better information on the sustainability of the ICT sector.
Got it. All right, so last question here. There's a big debate, this is almost religious, between 5G and Wi-Fi 6. So are you familiar with the differences between them? Is there anything?
No, I stayed in 5G yet.
Gotcha. Okay, so I just for everyone's edification, the debate here is that 5G is going to have a hard time penetrating concrete, and so where the other ones were using different frequencies, and so they're saying, well, Wi-Fi 6 will be able to use different spectrum to be able to do this. But I think the reality in this is just my opinion. There's going to be all the above. There's not going to be a technology that wins out in this. There's going to be people that are deploying 5G, femtocells and picocells inside of buildings that allow that distribution to be able to do it. But there's also going to be Wi-Fi 6 deployments. The whole point is it's going to be all types of technologies that are going to be deployed in smart cities. So, we'll see. This isn't like beta versus VHS.
Yeah.
It's not a standard.
And then I think that also part of for this a wonderful technology that we will have, we also have to still deal with the other types of technologies. No, we will also be having still 4G. And in some parts of the world, we still have 3G. So we have to see the whole picture. And when we talk about cities, we really have to see the whole pictures of digital infrastructure and urban infrastructure as a whole. And that is something that is one of the key messages I wanted to share. That is a great point.
You're right. Yeah, it's just that every city might be at a different level here, and every region is also on a different step in their journey. And so especially in emerging markets that have massive infrastructure build-outs that are going to happen compared to more, I guess, ones that have invested already and have a lot of that infrastructure. So it's going to be interesting to watch here. Well, Daniela, thank you very much for your time. I really appreciate your insight. And by the way, I'm inspired by your story, and I hope that others will be inspired by it as well, because we need more people like you in this industry.
Thanks.
Right? The thinkers, the engineers, the scientists, that type of thing. So thank you for what you do.
Thanks. And thanks for inviting me. Thank you very much.